Oh, drat these computers. They're so naughty and so complex. I could pinch them.
What's up, everyone, and welcome. This is the second episode in my new weekly review of security events that happened in the last week. Made some modifications, some improvements. Thanks for all your great feedback. It's wonderful. Let's dive right in. The biggest news this past week was REvil ransomware gang disappearing completely from the public internet and dark web. All web presence is and has been offline for days. There's tons of speculation out there. Did Russia take them down right before the big showdown between Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin? Or did a U.S. intelligence agency take them out? Or maybe they took everything down and let kind of everything cool down a bit. You know, take a vacation to the Bahamas or something. Or after so many successful hacks in the last year, maybe they've made enough money and decided to exit stage left.
Exit. Odds Bods can sing all the way. Stage left.
Many victims, however, of the Kaseya ransomware attack are still in the process of recovering, and so far, there's one victim that's come forward that's facing a particularly difficult issue. The company paid the ransom and received the decryption keys from REvil, but they found that the keys aren't working. REvil typically offers a help desk function that aids victims with getting back their data, but REvil is now gone, so who is there to help them? So yes, we're very excited to see that at least for the short term, REvil is now offline and gone, and not going to be, harassing us and trying to hack into our systems. But there's still estimated 1,500 companies that were affected by this that may or may not be back in business. Now, if you have not yet watched my episode on the Kaseya hack, like how it happened and why, there's a link above to the episode on my channel, and there will also be a link below in a pinned comment. As I said, I've made some modifications, made some improvements, so I now categorize the news that I'm going to share with you. We're going to jump in and start with phishing. These are all phishing attacks. First up, Facebook blocks highly targeted Iran-linked hacking campaign. An Iran-linked hacking group, tracked as Tortoiseshell, has expanded its list of targets to newer industries and more geographies, according to a new warning from Facebook's own security team. Active since at least 2018, Tortoiseshell was previously observed targeting information technology organizations in the Middle East, mostly in Saudi Arabia, with the Sysket backdoor, which was designed to collect various information from the compromised machines and send it to its command and control server. The hackers deployed a fake website claiming to help veterans find jobs, but instead attempted to infect their devices with spying tools and other malicious programs. The activity Facebook observed and subsequently took action against was part of a wider cross-platform cyber espionage operation that leveraged the social media platform for social engineering rather than direct malware delivery. Victims were then lured off the platform for infection. Now, this may not be your standard email-based phishing, but it has all the characteristics of it anyway. It's, instead of sending you an email telling you to click on a link, it's marketing to you or contacting you through a platform like Facebook, trying to get you to click on a link and infect your machine. So, next up we have LuminousMoth. Chinese hackers target government entities in widespread campaign. A newly uncovered advanced persistent threat campaign is targeting a large number of users in South Asia, including government entities, according to a new report from anti-malware vendor Kaspersky. Dubbed LuminousMoth, the activity involves cyber espionage attacks on governments since at least October 2020, but unlike similar attacks that are highly targeted, this campaign stands out due to its size, roughly 100 victims in Myanmar and 1,400 in the Philippines. The main focus of the attacks, however, was only a subset of victims that included high-profile organizations, including government entities both within the two countries and abroad. The threat actor uses spear phishing emails as the initial assault vector. The emails include a Dropbox download link that fetches a RAR archive posing as a Word document that deploys malware onto target machines. The malware can spread to other systems through removable USB drives on which it creates hidden directories and malicious executables. Coinbase users face ongoing phishing attack. Coinbase is the largest cryptocurrency exchange in the US, and researchers have detected numerous phishing campaigns against Coinbase users. The size and value of Coinbase is impressive, and if you think about how high cryptocurrency prices have shot, it only makes sense that this would be a phishing attack, trying to steal your cryptocurrency from you. Coinbase claims to have more than 56 million verified users in more than 100 countries. Its traded volume is around $335 billion, and it has $223 billion in assets on the platform. Researchers at anti-phishing firm Inky have discovered dozens of current phishing campaigns targeting Coinbase users. One such campaign uses a well-written and presented email supporting the Coinbase logo. There is little in the content to indicate a scam. There are no spelling errors or typos, and it uses acceptable style and grammar, which means this is, it seems like a legitimate email as opposed to seeing, misspellings or the wrong company name or some fake logo. The pitch differs slightly from the "we have detected unauthorized activity and have blocked your account" to one saying, "we have actioned your request to disable your account. Re-enabling the account requires clicking a button and re-entering credentials." And guess what, folks? The site you're going to land on is not Coinbase. It's some fake. So they've changed their tactic from trying to scare you to death in terms of, in the sense that saying that some unauthorized person's trying to access your account, to even scarier, saying your account, you asked us to disable your account and we're about to do that. And you're saying, yeah, but I have cryptocurrency in that account. I've got thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars worth of coins in there. What's going to happen to them so you rush over there to just try to stop the disabling of your account or stop the canceling of your account, only to get your credentials stolen and then your cryptocurrency stolen. Next up, Iranian hackers impersonate British scholars in recent campaign. You say, well, who cares? But it's important. And second time I'm talking about Iranian hackers here. In a recent attack campaign, the Iran-linked threat actor tracked as TA453 has been posing as UK scholars with the University of London School of Oriental and African Studies to engage targets of interest and steal their credentials. Referred to as Operation Spoofed Scholars, the campaign has been ongoing since at least January 2021, with a focus on harvesting sensitive information from individuals of interest, such as senior professors from well-known academic institutions and people focusing on the Middle East, including experts working with think tanks and journalists. According to Proofpoint, these groupings consistently have information of interest to the Iranian government, including but not limited to information about foreign policy, insights into Iranian dissident movements, and understanding of U.S. nuclear negotiations, and most of the identified targets have been previously targeted by TA453. Next up, BazarBackdoor sneaks in through nested RAR and ZIP archives. Security researchers caught a new phishing campaign that tried to deliver the BazarBackdoor malware by using the multi-compression technique and masking it as an image file. The multi-compression or nested archive method is not new, but gained in popularity recently as it can trick email security gateways into mislabeling malicious attachments as clean. It consists of placing an archive within another. Researchers at Cofense say that this method can bypass some secure email gateways, which can have a limit to how deep they can check a compressed file. So if you have a compressed file inside of a compressed file inside of a compressed file, some email gateways may stop at scanning the second level of compression and say, I can't go any further than that, and so far I haven't found any malicious content, so this must be clean. Both attached nested zip and RAR archives in the attachment contain a JavaScript file that ultimately delivered trick bots, BazarBackdoor malware, a stealthy backdoor typically used on corporate targets to provide remote access to the threat actor. Cofense analyzed the recent malspan campaign and found that the role of the highly obfuscated JavaScript file was to download a payload with an image extension. Now, these are just announcements from the last week about phishing campaigns being run. There are many others, so if you have not yet watched my episode on phishing, the link is above, and there will be a link in a pinned comment below. Next up, patches. Kaseya releases the patches for vulnerabilities exploited in the ransomware attack. Yay! They did it. Great job. The latest update provided by the company said SaaS services have been restored for 95% of customers. As for the patch for on-premise installations, VSA 957A fixes a total of 6 security holes, a credentials leak and business logic flaw. a cross-site scripting vulnerability, a two-form factor authentication bypass issue, an issue related to secure flags not being used for user portal session cookies, a password hash exposure issue that could be useful for brute force attacks, and an unauthorized file upload vulnerability. If you missed my episode on both the Kaseya hack, what happened, as well as the follow-up Kaseya phishing scam, the links are pinned in comments below. Several vulnerabilities are patched in MDT AutoSave industrial automation product. Researchers at industrial cybersecurity firm Clarity discovered that MDT AutoSave is affected by 7 types of vulnerabilities, including 2 rated critical and 5 rated high severity. MDT AutoSave, in case you don't know, is an automation change management solution that provides backup, version control, historical tracking, user permission, audit trail, change detection, and disaster recovery capabilities for a wide range of industrial control systems, including PLC, CNC, SCADA, HMI, robots, drives, and welders. The product is used by some of the world's biggest manufacturers, including major car makers, Tesla, Kia, BMW, Hyundai, Honda, Coca-Cola, P&G, Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, and Nestle Purina. So if you work for these companies, any of these companies, you should be aware. If you know anybody who works for these companies, you should share this video so they can be aware. Google patches Chrome 0-day exploited in the wild this year. Google has released Chrome 91.04472.1644, Windows, Mac, and Linux to fix 7 security vulnerabilities. One of them, a high-severity 0-day vulnerability exploited in the wild. The 0-day patch on Thursday and reported by Google Project Zero's Sergey Glazunov is described as a type confusion bug in version 8, Google's open source C++ based and high-performance WebAssembly and JavaScript engine. Even though type confusion weaknesses would generally lead to browser crashes following successful exploitation by reading or writing memory out of the bounds of the buffer, they can also be exploited by threat actors to execute arbitrary code on devices running vulnerable software. While Google said that it is aware of the CVE 2021-30563 in the wild exploitation, they're aware of it being exploited in the wild. It did not share info regarding these attacks to allow the security update to kind of deploy on as many systems as possible before more threat actors start actively abusing it. So, this vulnerability is actively being abused in the wild. So make sure your Chrome browser is up to date. Newer versions of Microsoft Edge are based on Chromium. So, and when I looked on the Microsoft page for CVE, they said this CVE was assigned by Chrome. Microsoft Edge Chromium-based ingests Chromium, which addresses this vulnerability. Please see Google Chrome release for more information. Which, I mean, to me, to a normal person, like your dad or your grandma, or they have zero clue what that says or means. The way it reads says that Edge pulls in Chromium into their browser package, so it should be pulling in the fixed version without you having to do anything. But why can't they just use easier language and just say that? I don't know. Anyway, WooCommerce fixes vulnerability exposing 5 million sites to data theft. WooCommerce, the popular e-commerce plugin for the WordPress content management system, has been updated to patch a serious vulnerability that could be exploited without authentication. Administrators are urged to install the latest version of the platform as the flaw affects more than 90 versions, starting way back with version 5.50. The WooCommerce team says that the bug is critical, and it also affects the WooCommerce Blocks plugin for showing products on posts and pages. Next up, Software Maker removes a backdoor giving root access to radio devices, and guess what? They tried to keep it secret, not tell anybody that there was even a backdoor there. The author of a popular software-defined radio, or SDR project, has removed a backdoor from radio devices that granted root-level access. The backdoor had been, according to the author, present in all versions of Kiwi SDR devices for the purposes of remote administration and debugging. So it was there to help you out. The author pushed out a bug fix on the project's GitHub aimed at removing this backdoor silently, which sparked some backlash, as you can imagine. A hard-coded password gave root access to all devices. So there was one password hard-coded into the software that gave you root access to any device you could find. There was a video created by user cross-site scripting Fox, or XSS Fox, demonstrating how the backdoor could be exploited via a simple HTTP GET request, and it'll look something like this. So you have the radio device domain with port 874, and then you have the password that just gets handed in there. Next up, Palo Alto patches flaws in Prisma Cloud Compute Cortex XDR agent. Palo Alto Networks announced last week the availability of patches for security flaws in the Prisma Cloud Compute Cloud Workload Protection Solution and Windows Agent for Cortex XDR detection and response platform. That's a mouthful. The Prisma Suite, I should have just written that in the first place, right? The Prisma Suite secures your public cloud environments, your SaaS applications, your internet access, your mobile users, and remote locations through a cloud-delivered architecture. So this is a security piece of software. The most serious of the bugs that was found, CVE 2021-3042, is a local privilege escalation issue in the Palo Alto Network's Cortex XDR agent on Windows platforms. The flaw carries a CVSS score of 7.8. The second vulnerability, CVE 2021-3043, it is with a score of 7.5, is a reflected cross-site scripting vulnerability that affects the Prisma Cloud Compute web console. Next up, SAP patches high-risk vulnerabilities in NetWeaver. German software maker SAP has released 12 new security notes as part of its July 2021 Security Patch Day, as well as updates for 3 previously released security notes. The most important of the new security notes deal with 2 high-severity vulnerabilities in NetWeaver. The first is a missing authorization check, which is CVE 2021-33671, with a score of 7.6, while the second is a denial of service, which is CVE 2021-33670, with a score of 7.5. The first flaw affects SAP NetWeaver Guided Procedures, a component of the Composite Application Framework that provides role-based access to multiple backend systems. The second vulnerability affects SAP NetWeaver as for Java and exists because HTTP requests are not properly validated when monitoring data is stored. Thus, an attacker able to manipulate HTTP requests could exhaust system resources, causing a denial of service condition. SAP also released 9 new security notes dealing with medium severity vulnerabilities in CRM, ABAP, NetWeaver as APP, and ABAP platform, Lumira server, web dispatcher, and internet communication manager, and NetWeaver AS for Java, business objects web intelligence, and 3D visual enterprise viewer, and 1 security note for a low severity bug in NetWeaver AS for Java. Adobe patches critical vulnerabilities in Adobe Reader, Acrobat, and Illustrator, and a bunch of other applications. Adobe addressed multiple critical remote code execution and privilege escalation vulnerabilities in multiple products running on both Windows and Mac systems. The flaws fixed by Adobe affect Acrobat and Reader, Illustrator, FrameMaker, Dimension, and Bridge products. The updates address a total of 19 critical and important vulnerabilities. An attacker could exploit the flaw to execute arbitrary code in the context of the current user. Next up, we're going to a section I call Attacks and Vulnerabilities and Updates, which is a whole bunch of different stuff. There's a secretive Israeli exploit company that's behind a wave of zero-day exploits. According to separate reports, 2 different reports released simultaneously by Microsoft and Citizen Lab, the Tel Aviv-based Kandiru, which apparently is this fish thing, has been caught supplying high-end spyware capable of hijacking data from Windows PCs, Macs, iPhones, and Android devices. The 2 reports come less than 24 hours after Google's Threat Analysis Group documented 4 separate zero-day exploits in Chrome, Internet Explorer, and WebKit Safari that were created and sold by Kandiru to government-backed attackers. Exploit code from the mysterious Kandiru was first observed in .gov hacking operations in Uzbekistan back in 2019, but the company has stayed under the radar while supplying its commercial hacking packages to compromise targets ranging from journalists, politicians, activists, and dissidents. Microsoft's Threat Intelligence Center, which tracks security threats and cyber weapons, conducted its own analysis and said it found at least 100 targets of malware linked to Kandiru. including politicians, human rights activists, journalists, academics, embassy workers, and political dissidents. Microsoft found targets in the UK, Palestine, Israel, Iran, Lebanon, Yemen, Spain, Turkey, Armenia, Singapore, and probably soon to be United States. SonicWall warns of imminent ransomware attacks targeting firmware Flaw. Now, this is the second week in a row that I've had to read about SonicWall, which before last week I had not heard about SonicWall or touched a SonicWall device in easily 10 years. So the network appliance vendor SonicWall has issued an urgent security notice to warn of imminent data encryption ransomware attacks targeting known and already patched firmware vulnerabilities. The San Jose, California-based SonicWall said its own threat intelligence indicates that ransomware attackers are actively targeting security defects in its secure mobile access 100 series and secure remote access products running unpatched and end-of-life 8.x firmware. Organizations that fail to take appropriate actions to mitigate these vulnerabilities on their SRA and SMA 100 series products are at imminent risk of a targeted ransomware attack, SonicWall said. Now, if you've watched any of my other episodes before, you might recall one of my ending things you could do, like how do you stay safe. Check your hardware and your software. Not everyone knows to check firmware and see if it's end of life. They may click a button to see if there are any updates, but if like no warning comes up, then their current firmware is end of life. They might just say, "Oh wait, this is great software." There hasn't been a need for a security update or a patch in the last 3 years, but in reality, it's end of life. So make sure that you guys are checking the hardware and the firmware on all of the devices that you use to make sure that it's not end of life. Tulsa says network hack gained some social security numbers. Hackers gained access to the social security numbers of more than 24 people during a ransomware attack that forced the city of Tulsa to shut down parts of its computer network for months, officials said. Now, this happened a while back, but they're just now making this public for us. More than 18,000 hacked files were posted on the dark web with other information such as names, dates of birth, addresses, and driver's license numbers. The city shut down its network when it discovered the hack, which primarily affected those trying to pay water bills. All public-facing services have since been restored, and the entire network is expected to be fully functional by September 15th. September 15th? This network has been offline for months and months and months, which tells me they most likely didn't have sufficient backups. So backup. And make backups of your backups and store those backups in your freezer if you have to. Microsoft says SolarWinds Serv-U 0-day exploited by Chinese group. Now, I was kind of hoping that we could go the entire year without really hearing anything about SolarWinds, but, there goes that. IT management solutions provider SolarWinds informed customers that its Serv-U managed file transfer and Serv-U secure FTP products are affected by a remote code execution vulnerability that has been exploited in targeted attacks. So it's being actively exploited. The vulnerability, tracked as CVE 2021-35211, affects Serv-U version 15.2.3 hotfix 1 and earlier, and it has been patched with the release of 15.2.3 hotfix 2. According to Microsoft, the vulnerability has been exploited by a threat actor it tracks as dev0322. I wasn't done reading. Dev stands for Development Group, and is assigned by the tech giant, Microsoft, of course, to groups for which it is highly confident about their origin of identity. ForgeRock AM vulnerability exploited in attacks. Government agencies in the United States and Australia have warned organizations that a vulnerability affecting ForgeRock access management has been exploited in the wild. For those who don't know, ForgeRock AM is offered by identity and access management solutions provider ForgeRock. Access management is designed to allow organizations to manage various types of digital identities. Access Manager is based on the OpenAM open source solution, which ForgeRock sponsored until 2016. The vulnerability discovered in ForgeRock AM, tracked as CVE 2021-35464 and rated critical, is a Java deserialization issue that can be exploited by an unauthenticated attacker for remote code execution by sending a specially crafted request to an exposed system. In its advisory, ForgeRock said, An attacker can use the code execution to extract credentials and certificates or to gain a further foothold on the host by staging some kind of shell, such as the common implant of Cobalt Strike. Guess the fashion retailer notified users of the data breach. So Guess confirmed that the personal data of some customers was compromised in a ransomware attack it suffered in February 2021. It took them this long to do more due diligence, research, etc., and they're finally coming out and telling us all that user information was taken. In a filing with the Maine Attorney General's office last week, the company said it fell victim to a ransomware attack in February this year, and an investigation it launched into the incident has revealed that some user data was accessed by the hackers. The incident was discovered on February 19, 2021. In addition to attempting to encrypt files on the organization's systems and disrupt its operations, the adversaries were able to access certain Guess customers between February 2nd, 2021 and February 23rd, 2021. Again, as I said numerous times, these attackers are getting into your system and making themselves comfortable for days, weeks. Or in the case of the Mongolian Monpass server, which I mentioned in my first Security Weekly, months. Imagine a burglar breaking into your house and hanging out for months without even knowing. Like having some kind of Harry Potter visibility cloak or something like that. They were in the system, right? They were gathering information, getting users information from February 2nd to February 23rd. And it was, they were discovered, or an incident was discovered on February 19th. So they were still in the system for another 4 days. Let that kind of sink in for a couple minutes. But we're going to move on. Critical Cloudflare CDN flaw allowed compromise of 12% of all websites. Not 12% of websites in the United States or in Europe or in China. 12% of all websites. This is an interesting one, so pay attention. Cloudflare has fixed a critical vulnerability in its free and open source CDN.js, potentially impacting 12.7% of all websites on the internet. How can that be, you say? CDN.js serves millions of websites with over 4,000 JavaScript and CSS libraries stored publicly on GitHub, making it the second largest JavaScript CDN. So every time you pull in, let's say something like jQuery from a CDN, well, Cloudflare provides a CDN like that. You don't have to host it on your server. You can just source it from the CDN because it's going to load faster, right? Well, theirs had a problem. The vulnerability exploits comprised publishing packages to Cloudflare's CDN.js using GitHub and NPM to trigger a path traversal vulnerability and eventually remote code execution. So this is all found out by a researcher by the name of Ryotech. He noticed that for libraries that did not yet exist in the CDN.js, he could suggest the addition of a new library via the CDN.js's GitHub repository. Ryotech figured a way to trick the servers into executing arbitrary code. He was subsequently able to inject bash scripts at strange-looking paths, which were path traversal exploits, hidden inside zip TGZ archives, a concept popularized in 2018 as zip slip. So it's as if you submit a new JS file to Cloudflare. And along with that JS file, you create an NPM. And every time you make updates to the JS file, it automatically pulls in everything into the CDN and distributes it. So with the automatic pulling in of that stuff, you can inject then your arbitrary code execution or what have you into it. So there are very few checks and balances. There was no essential code quality or code analysis that allowed this gentleman, Ryotech, to take advantage of it. But I strongly suggest you read that article because there's a lot more details than I'm putting in here. Microsoft shares guidance on the new Windows Print Spooler vulnerability. Now, we've been hearing about this Windows Print Spooler vulnerability for a couple weeks now. But Microsoft has shared mitigation guidance on a new Windows Print Spooler vulnerability tracked to CVE 2021-34481 that was disclosed. They released an advisory last Thursday night for the CVE elevation of privilege vulnerability in the Windows Print Spooler that Dragos security researcher Jacob Baines discovered. Now, there's a difference. and we're going to find out about it right now. Unlike the recently patched Print Nightmare vulnerability, this vulnerability can only be exploited locally to gain elevated privileges on a device. The attack is not really related to Print Nightmare. Print Nightmare can be executed remotely, and this is only a local only vulnerability. Bane's confirmed to Bleak Computer. So, yes, it kind of takes advantage of the same issue, but the issue before was that I could do it from anywhere around the world, and now the issue is I could do it if I'm locally on the system. The Linux version of Hello Kitty ransomware targets VMware ESXi servers. I never thought Hello Kitty could be used for something malicious, but here we are. The ransomware gang behind the highly publicized attack on the CD Projekt Red uses a Linux variant that targets VMware's ESXi virtual machine platform for maximum damage. As the enterprise increasingly moves to virtual machines for easier backup and resource management, ransomware gangs are evolving their tactics to create Linux encryptors that target these servers. Now, I've said this in a few of my other episodes, that just because we see a lot of these ransomwares and a lot of these attacks always taking place on Windows, don't feel like you're safe because everything you have is on Linux. They're coming for you. And here's evidence of it. VMware ESXi is one of the most popular enterprise virtual machine platforms. Over the past year, there has been an increasing number of ransomware gangs releasing Linux encryptors targeting this platform. Security researcher Malware Hunter team found numerous Linux ELF64 versions of the Hello Kitty ransomware targeting ESXi servers and the virtual machines running on them. It has been known that Hello Kitty utilizes their Linux encryptor, but this is the first sample that researchers have publicly spotted. TrickBot updates its VNC module for high-value targets. The TrickBot botnet malware that often distributes various ransomware strains continues to be the most prevalent threat as its developers update the VNC module used for remote control over infected systems. TrickBot has been around for almost half a decade and transitioned from a banking Trojan to one of the largest botnets today that sells access to various threat actors. Its activity has been increasing constantly since the complete disruption of the Emotet botnet in January, which acted as a distributor for both TrickBot and other high-profile threat actors. A Romanian cybersecurity company, Bitdefender, says that its systems caught a new version of TrickBot's VNC module, VNC DLL, used after compromising high-profile targets. The updated module is called TVNC DLL and allows the threat actor to monitor the victim and collect information that would enable pivoting to valuable systems on the network. There's a new BioPass malware live streaming victims' computer screens. Hackers compromised gambling sites to deliver a new remote access Trojan called BioPass that enables watching the victim's computer screen in real time by abusing popular live streaming software. Apart from the unusual feature, which comes on top of the regular function seen in remote access Trojans, the malware can also steal private data from web browsers and instant messaging applications. The operators of the Python-based BioPass seem to target visitors of sites belonging to online gambling in China. They injected in the site's JavaScript code that serves the malware under the guise of installers for Adobe Flash Player or Microsoft Silverlight installers. Mint Mobile is hit by a data breach. Mint Mobile has disclosed a data breach after an unauthorized person gained access to subscribers' account information and ported phone numbers to another carrier. According to the data breach notification email sent to the affected subscribers this weekend, between June 8th and June 10th, a threat actor ported the phone numbers for a small number of Mint Mobile subscribers to another carrier without authorization. In addition to the ported number, Mint Mobile disclosed that an unauthorized person also potentially accessed subscribers' personal information, including call history, names, addresses, emails, and passwords. There are vulnerabilities that were found in Etherpad, collaboration tool that allow data theft. Researchers discovered two vulnerabilities in Etherpad, an open-source, collaborative, real-time editor that allows multiple authors to simultaneously edit a text document. The vulnerabilities can lead to theft or manipulation of documents being edited, and to theft, modification, or deletion of all data, and to targeting other internal systems that are reachable from the server. Etherpad has thousands of deployments worldwide and millions of users. It can be hosted locally or used through third-party public instances. The first vulnerability, CVE 2021-34817, found and described by researchers at SonarSource, is a cross-site scripting flaw that allows an attacker to take over a user account, including admins, and gain access to the document. Now, the second flaw, CVE 2021-34816, is an argument injection vulnerability that allows an attacker to execute arbitrary code and system commands to fully compromise the Etherpad instance and its data. This second flaw does require an admin account, which is not a default setting. However, if one exists, the two vulnerabilities can be chained by the attacker to first compromise an admin and then to use the admin privileges to execute arbitrary code on the server. Now here's other security news that's different than everything else so far. I want to start off first with talking about the Dutch researchers who found the vulnerabilities in Kaseya, warned them about it, but unfortunately it was too late. So it's an army of unpaid tech geeks that have quietly prevented hundreds of cyber attacks since 2019. It's called Dutch Institute for Vulnerability Disclosure, DIVD. Now, if they sound obscure, it's keeping with their discrete presence on the internet. This article sheds light on this low-key group of researchers. This is the group of Dutch researchers that reported the vulnerabilities to Kaseya shortly before they were exploited by the REvil ransomware gang. They are a volunteer army of unpaid tech geeks that have quietly prevented hundreds of cyber attacks since 2019 by finding holes in websites and software that could be exploited by hackers. Now, here's where your ears might perk up. Just before the 2016 U.S. election swept Trump to power, this group tested the security of Trump's Twitter account and were shocked to see how easy it was to hack. They hacked his Twitter account. They reported it to the Trump campaign, but they never even got a response. They were like, Trump campaign was like, who cares? Here's the kicker. They were able to hack it a second time in 2020, but this time it became international news. They took it seriously. In other news, the U.S. offers $10 million rewards for information on foreign hackers. It sounds similar to like America's Most Wanted, where they have $50 million for whoever, Osama bin Laden's nephew's grandson's best friend. The U.S. government has announced new initiatives aimed at combating ransomware and other cyber threats, including a new website and significant rewards for information on foreign hackers. The new website, stopransomware.gov, is designed to serve as a central hub that consolidates ransomware resources from all government agencies, including CISA, the FBI, the Secret Service, NIST, Department of Treasury, and the HHS. Its goal is to provide useful resources for individuals, businesses, and other organizations. StopRansomware.gov provides information on what to do if you have been hit by ransomware, avoiding ransomware, and reporting cyber incidents to authorities. Now, I also provide information about how to avoid being the victim of ransomware. But it's a good thing, by all means. Trend Micro released a research paper, Trends and Shifts in the Underground End-Day Exploit Market. And I found this fascinating. The 2-year research effort provides insights into the life cycle of exploits, the types of exploit buyers and sellers, and the business models that are reshaping the underground exploit market. I highly recommend reading that. The MI5's annual threat update came out, and it parallels the U.S. intelligence threat warnings. MI5's UK annual threat update for 2021 from Director General Ken McCallum almost mirrors the threat warnings delivered by the U.S. government agencies, ransomware and IP theft and cyber, and extreme right-wing terrorism amplified by online echo chambers, so social media. Or not just social media, but social media and localized groups in social media. The ranking member of the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, Senator Portman, claimed that the espionage problem is as much about us as it is about the adversary. And this was a key piece that I took out of that, which I find to be true. He says, rather than pointing the finger at China, we ought to be looking at our own government and our own institutions and doing a better job with the things we can control. Again, let's get our own house in order. I fully agree. We need to take these things more seriously. We need to look at our processes. We need to look at our systems. We need to look at the team that we have running it and say, is the team even big enough to take on this task? And adjust. LinkedIn, back in the news, another data scraping. Researchers from Cyber News team have spotted threat actors offering for sale 600 million LinkedIn profiles scraped from the platform. For the third time in the past 4 months, LinkedIn seems to have experienced another massive data scrape conducted by a malicious actor. Once again, an archive of data collected from hundreds of millions of LinkedIn user profiles surfaced on a hacker forum, where it's currently being sold for an undisclosed sum. This time, the author of the forum post is purportedly selling information gathered from 600 million LinkedIn profiles. Samples from the archive shared by the author include full names, email addresses, links to users' social media accounts, and other data points that users had publicly listed on their LinkedIn profiles. While not deeply sensitive, the information could still be used by malicious actors to quickly and easily find new targets based on the criminals' preferred methods of social engineering. So, folks, for the week of July 12th to 18th, that's it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe and smash the bell. And again this week, say a kind word to a stranger. Okay, guys, take care. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next episode.